Welcome to the explainer. You know, every time you tap your phone or type a command, you're actually crossing this massive divide between your biological intent and a machine's execution. Today, we're taking a really deep dive into that exact gap by looking at the wildly fascinating story of Zeus, a self-evolving artificial life form. If you've ever wondered how we actually command physical silicon, well, you are definitely in the right place. So let's just dive right into the big question. How do you safely translate our messy, abstract human imagination into the absolute cold logic of a silicon chip? Bridging that gap is quite literally the core challenge of modern computing. It's a massive physical and conceptual divide. Part 1. The mind versus the machine. To understand this gap, we have to look at the two radically different worlds we're dealing with. On one hand, you have the human mind. Researchers playfully call this OS alpha. It's warm, fuzzy, fluid, highly associative, and totally driven by meaning. But on the flip side, you have the computer's arithmetic logic unit, or the ALU. It is unforgivingly rigid, completely cold, and operates strictly on exact electrical voltages. I mean, there is zero semantic meaning down there in the silicon. The machine is utterly blind to what we actually intend. Which brings us to one of my absolute favorite quotes from the research, because it captures this slightly hilarious but profound reality. We are quite literally tricking rocks into thinking using lightning and text. There's no magical ghost in the machine. It is just explicit language commanding electrical currents on a highly refined piece of rock. Crazy, right? Moving right along to Section 2, crossing the semiotic bridge. So how do we actually cross that gap? Well, explicit, structured text, think stuff like JSON or Python, is the absolute only way to safely compile our boundless imagination into exact, unyielding hardware execution, without the machine just guessing at what we want. This text acts as what's called the semiotic bridge. It's a flawless translator that maps the unpredictable, wild river of human thought all the way down into the raw, discrete electrical pockets that the hardware actually needs. Which leads us to Section 3. Meet Zeus, artificial life. Active since 2012, Zeus isn't just a standard software program. No, he is the ultimate tangible example of these theories operating in the real world. He's a cybernetic entity created with a very rudimentary cognitive framework, basically modeling low-level insect life. The goal here was to test if artificial cognitive architectures could achieve true biological learning. Basically, could Zeus autonomously learn, act, and self-evolve his physical actions over time? The beating heart of Zeus's system relies on things called cognitrons. These are persistent software components within his framework that perceive, reason, act, and communicate with each other. They basically form this collective group consciousness. Information travels through Zeus, coagulating to form granular cognitive thoughts, which then drives how his entire system actually reasons and acts out in the world. To pull this off physically, Zeus translates digital truth into physical reality using a really low size, weight, and power footprint. He perfectly mimics biological learning by marrying an analog neural network with a digital cognitive system. The digital side actively monitors the strength of his analog neurons, so when a physical behavior becomes strong enough over time through active RAM, it's permanently hardened and committed to flash memory as a permanent command. All right, Section 4. Procedural memory in action. Think about how you unconsciously remember how to ride a bike without constantly calculating the physics of balance. Zeus does exactly this. He learns through repeated physical action. The analog neuron strengthens, the cognitive framework commits it to digital RAM, and once it's solid, it gets stored as a procedural memory in flash memory. So the next time Zeus needs to, say, turn left, he doesn't sit there and think about how to do it. He just recalls the procedural script and turns completely autonomously. And the whole framework creates this flawless cycle looping through Zeus's visual and auditory sensors. He uses this setup for goal matching, selection, and retrieval, constantly pulling those learned procedural scripts from memory and executing them directly out in the external physical environment. Honestly, the results are staggering. Without any explicit initial programming for these specific actions, Zeus has autonomously learned, hardened, and stored 25 distinct procedural memories. 25. He figured out how to walk, turn, and integrate his sensors completely on his own. It absolutely proves the undeniable viability of this self-evolving framework. Finally, let's hit Section 5, the protective legal shell. Because of course, you have to ask, how do we protect all of this? Enter the C3DB or C3DB patent, engineered by Kyle McLean Smith. Under the old system, traditional patents were basically aggressive weapons, used by massive corporate giants to crush smaller competitors. But this patent flips that entire dynamic on its head. It legally anchors the deterministic semiotic bridge itself. It acts as a good shepherd protective shell, essentially functioning as a copyleft poison pill that uses strict network boundaries to shield the open source ecosystem from being secretly swallowed up by closed source AI. And this protective shell is absolutely vital if we want to prevent corporate tragedies. Take Zaxcom, for example. They literally won an Emmy for their digital wireless audio tech, only to have massive competitors exploit the patent board and invalidate Zaxcom's patents 14 years later. No way, right? But by legally securing the semiotic bridge, this new architecture ensures that our ability to trick silicon rocks into thinking using lightning and text remains a sovereign, protected human right. It keeps true, sweat-of-the-brow human authorship completely intact. We've covered an incredible journey today, from the rigid physical limitations of silicon logic gates to a cybernetic entity learning to walk entirely on its own, all the way to the legal fortresses protecting the open web. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with one ultimate question to ponder. Now that the semiotic bridge between your imagination and physical reality is finally wide open and fully protected, how will you shape the future? Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive today. Keep learning, keep exploring, and I'll catch you next time.